Well, hey there, guys. I'm Axel the Beast, and this is the Curiosity Shop, the ZeldaDungeon.net video mailbag where I answer your Zelda questions. And real quick before we get going, I want to remind you guys to check out the Mailbag logo contest, where you submit a transparent background logo that says Curiosity Shop. It will go into effect in Mailbag number 100. You can check out the full rules in the thread in the description, and you can submit your logo there, or email it to me at the Mailbag email address. And it's going to be ending probably next week, so just get them in. Just reminder. Alright, our first question comes from Pocket Monsters 3. What is your favorite graphical style in the Zelda series? Mine is Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. Well, be sure to tell me your guys's, but there's a lot of styles in the series, and I really think the series is better for experimenting with styles constantly. But my favorite was actually Skyward Sword, and I know you're probably thinking, oh, he's talking about Skyward Sword again. But I really liked Skyward Sword's art style. It was kind of what I wanted from the series for a while, so it wasn't like Skyward, just like it because it was Skyward Sword. It's what I wanted to see in Skyward Sword. It's one of the reasons I do like the game. It's a really good style, I think, because it's very colorful, very pretty, and it lends itself well to beautiful scenes, scary and serious scenes, as well as, cartoonish scenes. I think because of the art style, Skyward Sword had a lot of that really well. It's very stylized, but it's very realistic. It depicts things properly. So, yeah, that'd be my personal favorite. But, again, be sure to tell me yours. Kizo asks, should Nintendo implement a difficulty level selection? Why or why not? I think definitely yeah, because even in like Skyward Sword, where it's a fairly hard game to begin with, or at least it was for me, not necessarily for everyone, even once you have hero mode, you go into hero, you beat the game, right? And it's kind of challenging. Then you go into hero mode, and it's like exactly the same. At least it was for me, because I had played the game, gotten really used to it, knew how to do things, and got better at the game, and better at the enemies in the game, and then I play hero mode, and it's the same thing, just a little harder, but not enough to offset the skill level increase. And this is a common problem for me, and I imagine other gamers with static difficulty levels you can't choose. So, really, the difficulty option needs to be there from the beginning, and this is something Nintendo kind of needs to get modern on, difficulty levels. Second quests are good unless they're not significantly harder enough to offset the increased skill level, which I don't feel Skyward Sword was. Athenian200 asks, do you know how the land of Hyrule got its name? Well, we don't know for certain, like, we're not wizards, or know what Nintendo's thinking, we're not binary. Yeah, that was insane. But there is a fairly logical reasoning I can come to about this, which is the fact that there's the goddess Hylia, probably created by the golden goddesses, that's unclear, I guess. But there's goddess Hylia, and there was people, humans, who worshipped her, who have the features of the Hylians, so we know they become the Hylians. They take on that name at some point, and they founded the kingdom of Hyrule, so Hylia, Hylians, Hyrule. That's my best guess, and I think it's pretty logical. Wolf Sage asks, what is the worst thing that has ever happened to Hyrule? Well, I think this is somewhat subjective because a lot of people have different definitions of what is the worst possible thing. One of the worst, I think, would be the war prior to Skyward Sword with Demise, all those guys, because they really Hylia barely beat them. All the humans got driven out. They had to hide the Triforce, etc. I guess it's not really like they did lose, because a lot of the non-human species stay down there, but it sounds like it was a much more difficult war, and they actually almost had a defeat in some ways. So it seems like it's pretty severe, more so than Ganon's takeovers or the Twilight takeover in Twilight Princess. I guess the other thing would be, ironically caused by the good deities, not the evil ones, the flood prior to the Wind Waker. It's always, the worst stuff is always between games. It's never during a game, because they got to set up this really bad thing that happened, and then you've got to fix it. It can't actually happen in the game, because then that would be just way too dark, I guess. I don't know, it's a weird consistency, but it's always the really bad stuff happens between games. And I think that's the case. Those would be my two worst, but I don't know, you guys might have different ideas. HBA Kid asks, theoretically, could there be a fourth timeline in which you follow the Link that turns into a child and goes back to his own timeline? That would be the child timeline, which is one of the three that already exists, because that's when Link gets sent to the past and he goes off to do Majora's Mask, and then later in the timeline there's Twilight Princess and Four Swords Adventures. So that's the child timeline, and yes, it is possible. Vanitas12 asks, how do you feel about some fans giving unconditional love to the latest 3D Zelda game every time? Or, on the other hand, what about the initial hate that most of the 3D Zeldas get from some? Is it ever justified? I think it's definitely justified sometimes. There's definitely flaws in Zelda games, especially the recent ones, I think. And I like, for example, Twilight Princess, I had problems with it as soon as I saw it, although me playing the game, I actually liked it better than I thought I would. So I don't think that the hate is unjustified, though I think calling it being hate is a little excessive, and this is something that kind of happens from Zelda fans that just don't like change, don't like anything they don't want anything to change in their series, or on the other hand, people who don't like Zelda and don't like the elements they're staying the same, which is usually the whimsy of it, the goofy stuff. So, there's that. As for people liking them, I think it's natural. I think people are wanting the Zelda series to continually be better, and a lot of people do enjoy the recent Zelda games. I myself, Skyward Sword is my favorite Zelda game, as I've mentioned several times. So I don't think it's I haven't really seen unconditional love, if I'm being honest. But you know, if it exists, I'm never a fan of just liking something for no reason. You should like it for its qualities. So when that does exist, and I'm sure it does, that is foolish. And I think that excessive hate is foolish too, but both of them can be justified. Din Akira asks, what do you feel is an appropriate amount of time before a new Zelda game comes out on the Wii U? You have talked about how we got so much at the 25th anniversary year, so how long should we expect to wait? I'm not an expert at game development, with the game development times, but I would imagine next year or the year after that we will definitely hear something about it. I'm gonna, you know, something like that. How long it takes for the game to come out, I'm not really sure. Might be that, might be twice that. I'm not really sure on this, but that's the rough ratio I would say. I kind of expect to hear something next year, but I don't really know. It might be the year after that. Jimmy F27 asks, would you like the next Zelda game on 3DS to be a top-down 2D view, as in the Minish Cap, or would you prefer 3D World? I don't have any preference of the two, because I would like to see both. I'd like to see a 3D game on the 3DS, and I'd like to see 2D games again, and they would probably work best on a handheld. However, the probability is that they will do a 3D game, because it would take advantage of the 3D technology. That's my guess. So I'm not really sure what they'd actually do. They're probably going to try to surprise us, but I imagine it will be a 3D experience. Saint Jimmy 115 asks, what do you think about the Majora's Mask Ben drowned creepypasta? Caleb once mentioned something about it in his Majora's Mask walkthrough, but it was vague, and I want to know your opinion on it. Sadly, I'm not going to give you that much more detail either, because I'm not a big fan of it. I think it's a silly idea that you have like a game that's haunted and you could die playing it. You know, I don't take that seriously in any way, and I've gotten kind of annoyed about it, hearing about it all the time. So I don't have much of an opinion on it. What I do have is mostly negative. It's a silly thing to me. No further comment. Denix asks, could the Deku tree from the Wind Waker be the little sprout that appeared in the Ocarina of Time after beating the Forest Temple? Yeah, it's definitely that little guy. Because, I mean, unless there was other Deku trees and sprouts afterwards, but there's no reason to actually think that. As far as we know, the Deku tree is pretty much immortal unless killed, so it's probably the same guy or another later one. But it's not the same Deku tree from Ocarina of Time. That's no way that's possible. The Master of Swords 1 asks, if the Rito and the Wind Waker are descendants of the Zora, why do they have wings rather than fins to traverse the ocean? Are the waters cursed so that no one can find Hyrule? Almost right, because I think that the reason that they made the Rito is so there wasn't that plot hole that something could swim down and go to Hyrule. Or they wanted to make it so there wasn't a race that was that strong. But other than that, there's no reason for it. It just wanted to create something new while make it related, I guess. Ezekiel of Hyrule asks, I recently noticed that the Tadtones in Skyward Sword look almost identical to the Baby Zora in Majora's Mask aside from the coloration. I think that this is probably sheer coincidence, but I was wondering what your opinion on it is. Actually, they're probably not a coincidence, because they were both made to resemble musical notes. That's what the Zora babies were made for, so they could play the New Wave Bossa Nova, and that's what the Tadtones were designed for. They're probably not related biologically, but they had the same reason for their appearance. Juicy J asks, did you like the stamina gauge in Skyward Sword, and if so, how do you think it could be improved in the future? I definitely liked it. I definitely want to see it again. I don't think there's a lot you can improve on the idea or the design. I think mainly they just need to make it so there's more actions that you do use it for. I think that it would be a lot more, they could add more strategy to it. You really have to be careful about what you do and when you do it. In Skyward Sword, the stamina puzzles that existed were rather easy, and they weren't necessarily even puzzles. They were just, it was just a slight limitation that really wasn't enough of a limitation to hold you back most of the time. So they could make it more of a challenge, but that's the only thing I can think of. Just give us more tasks designed with it in mind, and that's it. Alright guys, that's it for this time. Be sure to send your questions and logos into the contact page in the description or the email address, and I'll see you guys later. Master Short Pants asks, what are your thoughts on the Tetraforce and the Valley of the Flood theories? No. Just no. Ah! Ah!